Welcome to Algebra 1, Unit 7, Lesson 9 practice problems. We're going to start with the vocabulary terms for this lesson. The first term is coefficient. This is talking about a number that is being multiplied by a variable. In their example, 3x plus 2, the coefficient is 3. And in 5 plus p, the coefficient is 1. The next is constant. Constant is a number that is not being multiplied by a variable. So as the variable changes, it doesn't affect the constant. In their example, 5x plus 2, the constant is 2. In 5x minus 8, the constant is negative 8. And in 12x minus 4, the constant is negative 4. The third term is linear term. In the standard form quadratic expression, the linear term is bx. And finally, the zero product property. This simply says that if I'm multiplying two things together and I'm getting 0 as the answer, one of those two things I multiplied together must be 0. If you have any question about these vocabulary terms, please use class time to ask for clarification now so that you'll be better prepared as we go into the practice problems. In our first practice problem, it says find all the solutions to each equation. So solutions are x-intercepts. So for each one, we're going to take the factors, set them equal to 0, and solve for x. In number 1, either x equals 0 or x minus 1 equals 0, you would add 1 to each side, and this would become x equals 1. So either x equals 0 or x equals 1. Number 2, either 5 minus x equals 0. We add x to each side, and we find out that 5 equals x, or 5 plus x equals 0. We subtract 5 from both sides, and we find out that x equals negative 5. So this one has two solutions. Number 3, either 2x plus 1 equals 0. We subtract 1 from each side, and 2x equals negative 1. Then we divide both sides by 2, and x equals negative 1/2. Or x plus 8 equals 0. We subtract 8 from each side, and x equals negative 8. Again, number 3 has two answers. Number 4, Number 4 has the same factor multiplied by itself. So the only factor we really have is that 3x minus 3 equals 0. We add 3 to each side, and we get 3x equals 3. Then we divide both sides by 3, and we find out that x equals 1. So number 4 only has one answer because it only has one unique factor. And the last one, number 5, either 7 minus x equals 0. We add x to both sides, and we find out that 7 equals x, or x plus 4 equals 0. We subtract 4 from both sides, and we find out that x equals negative 4. So number 5 has two factors, and therefore two solutions, 7 and negative 4. If you have any questions about how to solve a practice problem like this, please use class time now to ask for further clarification before moving on to the next practice problem. Next practice problem. Rewrite each equation in factored form and solve using the zero product property. So on number 1, I know that to get d squared, I'm going to need to multiply d times d. Looking at the second sign, the plus tells me these are both going to be the same, and the first tells me they're both going to be minus signs. Now I need two numbers that multiply to 6 but add to 7. And that would be 1 and 6. Now that I have the factored form, I need to use the zero product property to find the solutions. So either d minus 1 equals 0, we add 1 to both sides, and we find out that d equals 1, or d minus 6 equals 0. We add 6 to both sides, and we find out that d equals 6. So number 1 has two solutions. Number 2. To get x squared, I know I'm going to need x times x. Looking at the second sign, the plus tells me they're the same, and the first sign being a plus tells me they're both plus. And now I need factors of 81 that add to 18. And that's going to be 9 and 9. I only have one unique factor, so that means x plus 9 equals 0. We would subtract 9 from both sides, And we would find out that x equals -9. And that's our one solution for number 2. Number 3. I know that to get u squared, I'm going to need u times u. Looking at the second sign, being negative, tells me the signs are going to be opposite. The first sign being plus means my larger one is going to be positive. Now I need factors of 60 that will add to 7. So 1 and 60 doesn't work. 2 and 30 doesn't work. 3 and 20 doesn't work. 4 and 15 won't work. But 5 and 12 will. So I want my bigger one to be positive. So this is going to be u plus 12 equals u minus 5. Now I use the zero product property and set them both equal to 0. So either u plus 12 equals 0. We subtract 12 from both sides. And we find out that u equals -12. Or u minus 5 equals 0. We add 5 to both sides, and we find out that u equals 5. So number 3 has 2 solutions. And number 4, to get x squared, I know I'm going to have x times x. The second symbol being a plus tells me my signs are going to be the same. And my first symbol being a plus tells me both signs are going to be positive. I need factors of 0.01 that add to 0.2. And that would be 0.1 times 0.1. Number 4 only has one unique factor, so that means x plus 0.1 equals 0. We would subtract 0.1 from both sides, and we would find out that x equals -0.1. And 4 only has this one answer. If you have any questions about how to solve a practice problem like this, please use class time now to ask for further clarification before we move on to the next practice problem. Next practice problem. Here is how Elena solves the quadratic equation x squared minus 3x minus 18 equals 0. Is her work correct? If you think there is an error, explain the error and correct it. Otherwise, check her solutions by substituting them into the original equation and showing that the equation remains true. So if we look, Elena's first step was to factor. To get x squared, we know it's going to be x times x. Then the second symbol tells us that the symbols are going to be opposites. And the first symbol tells me the bigger one should be negative. We need factors of negative 18 that will add together to be negative 3. Where Elena made a mistake is that the 6 should have been the negative and the 3 should have been the positive. If you multiplied this together, you would actually get plus 3x, not minus 3x. So if we correct that, then we have x minus 6 times x plus 3 equals 0. Now either x minus 6 equals 0, we add 6 to both sides, and we find out that x equals 6, or x plus 3 equals 0. We subtract 3 from both sides, and we find out that x equals negative 3. If you wanted to check this, you could say 6 squared minus 3 times 6 minus 18 equals 0. 6 squared is 36. Negative 3 times 16 is negative 18. "36 minus 18 is 18. And 18 minus 18 is 0. Our answer works. If we wanted to check the other answer, we would have negative 3 squared minus 3 times negative 3 minus 18 equals 0. Negative 3 squared is 9. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. 9 plus 9 is 18. And 18 minus 18 is 0. And we can see that our second answer also works. If you have any questions about how to solve a practice problem such as this, please use class time now to ask for further clarification before we move on to the next practice problem. This brings us to our last practice problem for Unit 7, Lesson 9. Jada is working on solving a quadratic equation as shown here. She thinks that her solution is correct because substituting 5 for p in the original expression, p squared minus 5p, gives 5 squared minus 5 times 5, which is 25 minus 25, or 0. Explain the mistake that Jada made and show the correct solutions. So when Jada got to this point, what she did was divide both sides by p to get p minus 5 equals 0. What she should have done was use the zero product property. Doing this would have given her p equals 0, or p minus 5 equals 0, which she correctly used. Add 5 to both sides and find out p equals 5. Where she's wrong is that by doing division instead of using the zero product property, she missed out on the answer of p equals 0. If we tried that, then we would have 0 squared minus 5 times 0, which is also correct. So this is why we don't want to divide. We want to go ahead and use the zero product property. Otherwise, we would miss one of the answers. If you have any questions about anything we covered on Unit 7, Lesson 9, please use class time to ask for further clarification before we move on to Lesson 10.